We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, where we are talking everything MCU and reacting in real time to the things that you need to know going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, because we are talking about the hottest content coming out, that means we're talking about Agatha Episode 5, which everybody is kind of losing their marbles about. So we're definitely going to start with the big thing because I can't keep my mouth shut anymore, and Katie and I haven't talked about this beforehand, so it's going to be a crazy episode. I'm going to kick it to her right now because she's already jumping out of her seat, and it's just, we're going. So press go now.
Yes, we are starting with the big thing because, okay. Marvel, if there was ever a time to spend your money on a song, it was in this moment. Because when I tell you, I've rewatched that scene about, I'd solidly say 10 times. And I'm not even exaggerating. I genuinely am telling you, I've watched it about 10 times. I'm not joking. The beauty, first off, let's just rip the band-aid. We all knew Billy was teen. We were all aware of this. Wiccan, every name he wants to go by, Kaplan, Maximoff, whatever. We all were aware this was who this was. Called that, knew that, said that from the start, never doubted it. Even when they tried to make us doubt it, never doubted it. But to sit there and that boy puts it's not actually a crown, but it's around the crown of his head that matches his mother's. And then you start playing Billie Eilish's "You Can See Me in a Crown," and that is how you roll into the credits. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I mean, let's, not to be dramatic, but there was a before that scene happened and there was an after that scene happened. I literally went feral. I started screaming. I was FaceTiming Kate. She didn't pick up. Then I'm
because I didn't watch it last night.
But then I was like, you know how when you FaceTime someone and they don't pick up, you can leave a video? I just was cackling for 5 minutes straight. I don't actually know if I actually said any words to you. I was just so shook. It was insane. I have loved that Billie Eilish song for years. That's probably the first one I ever knew, and it still slaps. She has made great music since. That is still probably one of my absolute favorites of her of all time. And the way that it fit the scene, it's like when they were playing Heads Will Roll at the end of one of the earlier episodes. The way that they have used the end credit music in this show, sometimes it's super boring and sometimes it just hits you really freaking hard. And you're like, you know what? Actually, this is so smart. They are just creating these viral moments that everyone is talking about. The way that the internet exploded last night and throughout today, because we're recording this on a Thursday, has been insane.
I have to say, I'm actually a little shocked we got the reveal now.
Yeah, it's early.
I was not expecting us to find out, honestly, until probably 8 or 9 when we were entering or in the climax of the show. I really was not expecting us to find out what was going on. And we'll get to the whole scene in a second here because obviously I think we have to talk about what the heck happens in episodes 6 through 9 at this point.
Yeah.
But I was just so taken aback because I think it was one thing to confirm who he was, because you could have ended it, right? Where Agatha sat there and was like, "You're just like your mother." And I already was like holding on to the table. I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God."
The fact that she knew this whole time. She knew.
I don't think she did. I don't think she did, because she did at one point think he was her son.
But I guess my point there is, when did she figure it out? Because she very clearly said that to him.
When Rio told her that he wasn't her son. When Rio confirmed that that was not her son, I think she immediately knew whose it was.
Okay, interesting.
I truly do. I stand by that. I fully believe that after Rio told her, you know the boy's not yours, she was like, well, crap, because I know exactly who he is then.
Interesting. Okay.
But going back a second before all that.
I'm sorry, I have so many thoughts.
No,
that are, like,
I know.
racing.
They could have left it there.
Yeah.
They could, and I thought they were going to. I thought that was the black screen, music was going to come in, credits roll. I thought she was going to sit there and just say, "You're just like your mother." Did I think he was going to go a little off the deep end? No, but we saw why. I understand his reasoning. And then I don't think I expected the clear reveal, because even when he was using his powers, I was like, well, we all are seeing this. We all kind of already know. But then to sit there and do the close up as the crown goes on him and they match his mom's, which is a beautiful touch, because while he does have it in the comics, it doesn't look like Wanda's in the comics.
No.
And that was impeccable. It also confirms to me he doesn't want more power. He's on that road to get his mother back.
Also, just a lovely, beautiful parallel, the fact that they were both crowned in front of Agatha freaking Harkness is insane.
You're right.
Like, so well done. I don't even know how to explain. Like, my brain stopped working when she confirmed who he was. I short-circuited, and then he started murdering everyone, and I just stopped. I'm pretty sure all electrical activity inside my brain stopped. I just went completely numb. It was insane.
Listen, is he the first Marvel Nepo baby? No. Hope Van Dyne is. But is he my favorite Marvel Nepo baby? Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
I would protect Joe Locke with my whole life. Like, if he was in front of a speeding car, I would push him out of the way and take the impact for him. I love him in this role. He has he had me hardcore bamboozled. I know you've been saying, and I know we're going to get into this, I know you've been saying all this time, and that was my second thought after my brain stopped and then restarted. I was like, dang it, she's going to just rub this in my face the whole episode.
Man, you know I am. I saw this and I was like, oh. And my boyfriend hasn't seen it yet because we couldn't watch it last night. We weren't home. So I watched it today and he hadn't seen it. And he got home from work. He was like, okay, I'll watch it, whatever. And I was like, the only thing I'm going to tell you about the episode is that I'm always right. And that's the only thing I said, because I was like, I was.
But I will say, with Joe Locke, as much as you were saying that, and I could see where you were getting your thoughts, and other people were saying it too, I still wanted to believe, he made me want to believe that Teen was this, innocent little kid who was just there to learn, and he had, a little bit of power, but he wanted to learn more. And then the way he flips that switch as soon as Alice died, and obviously we will talk about that too, but as soon as she died and he went from putting on the sweet little teen facade and he took that off, and I was like, he was like, screw you, I am Billy freaking Maximoff and I'm going to kill you because she was my friend and you just murdered her.
I honestly don't even know if it was fully a facade. I think it definitely was, but I think he was getting comfortable. And I think maybe it started one way, but then he was becoming one with them. And I mean, who said it? It might have been Agatha, but I feel like it wasn't. No, it was Jennifer when she was trying to get them to go after Agatha. And I know she called him something, but I don't remember what it was. But she essentially said, "You're not part of the coven.
Oh,
you
familiar.
don't get an opinion." Yeah. And so I think that was the start of it, where it was like, but I feel like I'm part of it. And I feel like I've been bonding with all of you. And he definitely, I think, was closest to Alice. You saw that, he's the one that Alice opened up to about her curse initially in what is that, episode 3. And then obviously you even saw in this episode, they were the ones who did the broom exchange together. Like, he was definitely getting closest, I think, to Alice. So between Jennifer kind of being like, by the way, you're just here for the ride as far as we're concerned. You're not actually part of this, which was a sucky remark if you really think he's part of the reason they've even made it this far at all. But then to have arguably his closest friend on the road be killed by one of their own, which is also the woman who terrorized him as a child.
Yeah.
Because I think at this point, as far as I'm concerned, he knows. I'm not thinking he doesn't. I mean, come on. No duh, it's going to be like, I'm done playing nice here. I tried. I tried to sit here and use you to get where I needed to and be nice about it. But now you're not playing around anymore, and so I'm not either. And again, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. He is not on that road to get more power. We just saw him. He not only had plenty of power, he overpowered 3 very powerful witches.
Yeah.
He completely went mind control on 2 of them to kill, and I say kill, and I use it very lightly, to kill one of them, and then to put the other 2 right into the quicksand mud thing by himself. He did that. So no, he doesn't need power. He's got an whole other need for being on the witch's road. And again, I think it's to get his mother back.
I mean, at this point, I don't know what else it would be, right? Like, we talked a lot at the beginning
His
of
brother.
this. Right, but I'm saying, like, family in general, right? Like, we talked a lot about whether it was unconscious or not, what is probably driving him could be that need for his family. And I think there have just been so many hints to his mother lately. And now there's rumors that Tommy's going to get his own show where he gets to, be reintroduced in his current iteration. And, we're going to get to see him become Speed as an older version of the character that we had seen in WandaVision. It no longer makes sense for it to be Tommy who he's going after. It does make more sense for it to be Wanda. And also, like, I just feel like there are things coming down the pipeline. There are storylines, rumored storylines that she needs to be alive for. I mean, the whole mutant thing, like, there are such important storylines where she is the center. I mean, have you read House of M? You kind of need Wanda Maximoff for that. So I don't think that they killed her short-sightedly at the end of MOM. I think this has always been a short little blip in her history where she's not going to be around and then she's going to be back. I don't think anybody ever thought, oh, hey, by the way, she's dead. Like, no. This is the opportunity. I think a lot of people went into this show thinking, all right, this is the resurrection of the Scarlet Witch now. And now we know kind of the vehicle is probably going to be her son.
I agree. I mean, I've been saying from very early, I don't know what episode because my thought process on where episodes fall is not going to be accurate. But I've been saying this is his show because the only character that I'm genuinely concerned with coming out of the show is him. The only one I can pinpoint a future for. But then I also saw somebody on Twitter saying the only reason I think this show is being made genuinely is to bring the Scarlet Witch back. And I sat there now, and with all the facts now piling up, I'm like, you're not wrong. Because yes, we needed to bring in her one son. We'll need to bring them both in eventually, of course. But we needed to start bringing them in. We have the Young Avengers starting to assemble. We do need them. But technically speaking, you could have just had him pop up somewhere. We didn't really need the full explanation on how he lived. If I'm being honest, it probably would have hurt my head. So you could have just had him pop up as Billy Kaplan, gone off the comic idea, and I wouldn't have thought twice about it. And it could have just been like a one-off explanation. Didn't need to be like a big thing. But the way that they built this entire show and the fact that the Witch's Road is built the way it is and the storyline is that way, I just no longer think that it's just the show to kind of, bring Agatha further or have Billy introduced. It's got to have a bigger purpose. And so I do agree with what you were saying and what I've also now been seeing a lot online as well. It's like, this is it. This is the show. You need the Scarlet Witch. They've been talking about her in Doomsday. So I'm like sitting here, I'm like, well, just confirm she's already back at this point. You might as well. So I do think this is it. And I actually have to say, the irony is he himself is not looking for more power, but he quite literally is searching for more power.
Yeah. I mean, she is the embodiment of chaos magic. So, yeah, that ending. I want to talk about where we go from here, and then we'll backtrack to kind of the end of the episode or those last, I mean, honestly, like 10 minutes. It was actually a really short episode. Like, when the credits rolled, I was like, hold one moment. It was like a 30-minute episode, which
It was very
it felt
short.
that way too.
Yeah.
It felt very short, especially because those last 10 minutes were crazy. But I want to talk about where we go in 6, 7, 8, and 9. Because at this point, I think we've gone a little off the rails. Not in a bad way, but in a way that, we kind of had a thought, oh, maybe Nicholas Scratch is going to come in and be the main antagonist. And this is actually going to have a lot to do with Agatha and her son and Mephisto. And we're going to get that whole backstory. And we might, but I don't think that's the focus now. I mean, now we're going to see what Teen does. And we're going to be focused on his movements forward. But I don't know, other than the end game of trying to get his mom back, what these next 4 episodes are going to shape up to be.
I don't either. And I think where I struggle is the caveat here is he's still not a Coven member. So while he's been on the road this whole time with them, and this has a point, I promise, because that sounded a little random, but if theoretically he just got Agatha, Lilia, and Jennifer off of the road, well, Lilia hasn't done her trial. Rio, where the heck was she? She never came out of trial 3. I never saw her leave the building.
True. You know what I bet, if I'm going to just put out a theory right now?
Tell me.
They very conspicuously, they very conspicuously panned over to her when Nicholas Scratch entered the room. And if we're going off our previous theories, I know he said goodbye, so technically the spirit should be gone. But I do wonder if that affected her and maybe she tried to have a conversation, because I think now we can say if that was in fact Nicholas Scratch, he's not going to make an appearance. He's dead. So whatever happened, he was not raised by Mephisto. He's not an agent of Mephisto. He is like no longer on the plane of the living.
It also confirmed he died as a toddler. Like, he wasn't a baby. When you heard the laughing, and also go back to the first episode, Agatha had a whole room for him that had a child's bed, not a cradle or anything of that sort. It had a child's bed and it was a child's room beyond a baby. So he was like, he could have been like 5, 7 years old. So that's a whole other thing, is that this boy like lived on the earth. He wasn't just a baby given up. He was living on this earth. I want to backtrack really quick because we were talking about Rio. I wouldn't be shocked. There's a lot I want to talk about with Rio as we move a little further into this as well, because she was very affected by this episode, which shouldn't be shocking because this was Agatha's trial.
Yeah.
And while it did focus on Agatha, I was more worried about how Rio was reacting to Agatha reacting to her trial.
Yeah. Yeah, because there was so much clear love and empathy there, especially when Agatha's mom started talking to her about how she was evil from birth and how she should have killed her the moment she came out of the womb, which, by the way, you want to talk about an emotionally damaging parent-child relationship. I think Mrs. Harkness is like right up there with the worst of them.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe with Ego, who tried to kill his own son. Mrs. Harkness, meet Ego. You guys could get along. But I think what struck me, and this is kind of what you were touching on too, is obviously that was so painful for Agatha for the clear reason of, that's my mom basically telling me she wishes I was dead or never born. But not only that, again, it very conspicuously panned over to Rio, and you just saw this incredible look of just pain, not because of what she was saying, but because of how it was affecting Agatha. And so it just lends more to what we were talking about last episode with their, past romance. I think it's showing how deep that bond was. We saw how much Rio was in pain seeing Agatha hurting about her son and those reminders. Well, this is another part of her past that was clearly very traumatic, and Rio is feeling that empathetically for her former partner, who she very clearly still has very big feelings for.
I also think Rio might have been around during that time period. And so I think that was an additional thing where she might have gone through these moments with Agatha. As far as Agatha's mother, I was very upset with that line because, and I might be reading into this, and again, guys, I pull all of this lore from like the Vampire Diaries kind of vibe, so maybe this is not how Marvel works, but as far as I am concerned, it appeared that Agatha has always been punished because she isn't a witch. She's a siphon. And so to me, I've always read into that from even her backstory. They showed it again this episode when they were actually trying to kill her. And she indirectly then killed all of them because she sucked the power out of them. But again, didn't start with her trying to do that. That is just what happened. Now, for those of you who have read or have watched The Vampire Diaries or read it, but I don't know if this happens in the books, when, sorry, we're going to go into some lore for a second because I know T has not watched the show, so I need to explain it. When Carolyn has the twins, okay, so backstory, Carolyn's a vampire. These twins are witches' daughters. This has a point, I promise. And they get transferred into her stomach when their mother dies. It's a whole thing. They're siphons. And they actually are actively killing her as she's like trying to give birth and stuff because vampires are considered magical beings. And so they're like sucking the magic out of her that's essentially keeping her alive. So that's why even with that remark, I was like, I wonder if Agatha was indirectly killing her mother the whole time. Her mom saw that as evil. And that's why she's like, I should have just killed you. I should have just been done with you because you've done nothing but create harm. But again, some of it's just the fact that Agatha can't control her siphoning sometimes, and I'm sure as a child couldn't control it at all.
Yeah, I think it raises the question for me of like how common, and I know we've talked about this before, but like siphon type witches can't be that common. It's probably not the dominant type of witch, right? Like most witches, it seems, based on what we've seen on the show and the reactions to Agatha and the kind of ire that she gets from basically every other witch that she comes across, is they are born with their set magic, whatever type it is. Maybe they have a skill like some of our ladies in our coven, and that is their magic. But it seems like Agatha is a special type of witch in that she is able to then take magic from others. And if that's not the common or dominant type of witch, I can imagine, and I'm not trying to empathize with her mother because I think her mother is horrible, but I can imagine that it would be very jarring to then find out that your daughter is in this minority of witches who are true dangers to the witches around them. Then you add on the fact that she doesn't know how to control it. So that's a whole problem. And then because you treat her the way that you do, as a second class witch, if you will, you've unlocked some really aggressive and murderous tendencies. I mean, at one point, Jennifer calls Agatha a serial killer. And so that's like not kind language at all. It's not soft language at all. It just shows you exactly what the perception is of the type of witch that Agatha is, and that she's probably dealt with this type of negative energy towards her and attitude towards her entire life, starting with the woman who brought her into the world.
I couldn't have said it better because that's exactly kind of what I was thinking too. And so it's like those things where you treat somebody a certain way and then they just eventually embody it, right?
Yeah.
She probably was not born evil. Her mom perceived it that way because she's a siphon witch, very different than what they're used to. And then when you treat her probably like the dirt you did, well, there you go. But I do want to wrap back to the fact that you keep saying she can't control it. And that was kind of the issue during this episode as well. The whole idea of, I can't control it. I'm going to reference something else, another piece of literature, if you will. The Shatter Me series, which I know Taylor has, in fact, read.
After my own heart.
Yes. Well, I'm going to reference it because I think there's a great point here. The main character has lethal touch, so you cannot touch her skin. And the whole story or whatever, she like learns how to control it. That's the whole point. I understand that. Whatever. Moving apart from that. Obviously, she does not want to touch people because she is going to kill them. But when she does touch them, she is very similar to a siphon witch because she takes their life form. And they die, and she feels good for a little while because she gets power from that. I almost wonder if Agatha's like that. Maybe she isn't inherently always evil. Remember, she had the dark hold, guys. That makes everybody evil.
Yeah.
Look what happened to Wanda. Look what happens to Strange and other universes with it. That is just what it does. It has it's an evil book.
It corrupts people.
Yeah. And so taking away the dark hold, looking at her now, I don't think she actually can control her siphoning. And I actually don't think she tried to kill Alice. I truly think Alice tried to save her and it was all great and dandy, but Agatha can't stop because it starts to feel good. She starts to get power. And it's just like an inability to stop because you're like, wait a second, this feels great. You're not thinking about the consequences after it already has began.
Yeah, I don't wholly disagree with that. I think there's kind of two ways to interpret it, right? It's your way, which is, it happens and she starts to enjoy it and she just kind of loses the willpower to stop, because you see at the beginning when Alice hits her, she opens her arms like, yes, finally. Like, that's what she was trying to get them to do. If you remember all the way back to, I think, episode 1, she was trying to get them mad at her so they would hit her because she said, with their magic, because she said that she can only absorb if the person shoots at her. Like, she can't just suck someone's magic because they're standing 2 feet away from her, right? So when Alice did that, you actually see this look of just happiness and ecstasy on Agatha's face. And I think to your point, what could happen is it feels good. She's getting the magic back. She's getting what she wants and she doesn't want to stop. I think the other thing that was kind of how I interpreted it was it feels good. She's getting her magic back, but she has gone so long without trying to control it because one, she hasn't had magic for 3 years, thanks to Wanda. And two, when she was corrupted by the Darkhold, I don't think she cared enough to stop. That's why she's called a serial killer. She was actively out there killing witches, what seemed like pretty commonly. So I think she's kind of lost the ability, if she ever had it, to be able to take enough to replenish her without dealing that killing blow, because it looked like, I should say, to me, she really genuinely didn't want to kill Alice. She wanted to stop at the point where she got power, but Alice still had enough life and enough magic within her to survive, and she was unable to kind of sever the tie and draw that line. And so I think it's either you can take it as she didn't want to because it felt good, or she's simply lost the skill to be able to stop herself halfway through, like Edward and Bella, right? Is he able to stop without completely killing her? We're just using all of these amazing pieces of literature today. Welcome to our reading corner. This is just a little insight into what we read and have read throughout our lives and watched.
No, honestly. I think you're right, though. I know initially Alice blasts her because her mother takes her over. And so I think I initially had read into it, and it happened so fast, and I didn't go back to this part, so maybe I missed it. But I had thought when she kind of opened her arms and smiled, I thought it was because she was thankful she was banishing her mother out of her. And then it just doesn't stop. I mean, either way, I'm trying to give Agatha the benefit of the doubt that I don't know if she tried to kill Alice. Regardless, she did. And did I think it was going to happen? Yeah, I mean, guys, I've been calling it. I said, once these witches are done with their trials, we don't need them. Jennifer and Alice both are done with their trials. Jennifer was going to stick around more because she knows Agatha. They have a past. They don't like each other. So Jennifer wasn't going anywhere for at least a little bit more. But I was like, Alice, girlie, you're on that chopping block. I don't trust it. And so I'm not shocked she died. I'm sad.
Me too. I liked her a lot.
Well, and she just got her curse lifted. Poor girlie, never actually got to live in the world without a curse. And here we are. Again, am I shocked though? No. I am shocked it's by Agatha's hand.
Yeah, because I think because of the beginning, right, where Agatha tried to trick them into doing exactly what Alice had done, they were so careful, right? Well, I mean, Jennifer has no magic to even, shoot at Agatha at the moment. That's why she's on the road. But for Lilia and Alice, I feel like they were being very careful, right? Not to kind of get entrapped or goaded by Agatha into giving her their power. And I am kind of, to your point, surprised that at this stage that happened. I also think I was kind of waiting for it to be at the end when she betrayed them, when they all got what they wanted at the end of the road, and then it became every witch for herself, out here. I don't know what that last step is out of the road. We don't know at what point when Agatha went down the road last time, all of her coven died. Was it that she betrayed them at the end, or did they die along the road? Unclear. In my head, I was kind of expecting them to go full on battle mode against each other, and that's when that would happen. I don't think I expected Agatha to murder one of them this early on.
I didn't either. And again, I don't know if she meant to do it on purpose or not, but I definitely wasn't expecting to have another death. At this rate, we're going to go every other episode.
Yeah.
So, Lilia, Jennifer, watch your backs, girlies, because episode 7 and 8, here we go. But I think too, you made the comment about they were all trying to be careful to stay away from Agatha, not shoot her with the magic, all that. But then we had episode 4, and the whole point of episode 4 was, did we not talk about how the coven was bonding? I genuinely think Alice was starting to feel good with Agatha. When Jennifer was ready to sacrifice her, Alice was not necessarily right there with her. She was kind of like, oh, okay, hold on for a hot sec. I'm not saying she wasn't necessarily going to go along with it, but she wasn't as ready for it as Jennifer was. So I do wonder if there was a little bit of a, I'm starting to trust her. She's part of our coven. She's one of our sisters. So she didn't think about it. She thought, I'm protecting one of my coven members, and that's what I'm doing. And didn't think about the repercussions afterwards, which is the fact that she was shooting Agatha's body with magic. And it sucks, but I really do think, that was the point of what we saw in episode 4 truly. There's a reason we saw them bonding. We didn't need that scene at all. We didn't need that involvement. I mean, Agatha just sat there and helped Alice get rid of her curse. And was some of it because Alice accidentally cursed the entire coven when they got into the trial? Yes, of course, I'm sure. But Agatha was there and kept saying to her, sing louder, own it, it's yours, own it. And she was getting her to own her curse and face it head on to get rid of it. So I think between everything that happened in episode 4, I think Alice was trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, didn't think twice about protecting what she might have considered a friend.
I could not agree more. I think one of the things that I love about Alice, or loved about Alice, was that she was the one who was making the effort. I mean, Lilia kind of had this very maternal aura about her, and everybody kind of talked to her in that sense. But Alice was like your fun sister or your cool aunt, who she just made everybody feel full of value, I guess. Like, even the way that she treated Agatha, like Lilia and Jennifer always treated Agatha with such disdain, and Alice never really did that. She was respectful and kind. Even to Teen, she went out of her way to bond with this kid who, under the guise he told them, had very little magic and was just there to really learn and get a little bit more, right? Not someone who was raised in the craft as far as she knew. But she went out of her way to make that bond and to build that bond. And I think, to your point, she was starting to feel that her efforts were being reciprocated between these witches, or with these witches who she was with. And she simply forgot that they're not a real coven, in the sense that they're not coming into the road with an established bond and hundreds of years of battle and life together. They are people who are using each other. They are all means to an end. And for a second, she forgot, because don't forget, this is also the woman who revoked everything about witchcraft because of the curse on her family and her history with her maternal line. So she is not looking at the realities. She is looking at the idealized version of what a coven should be and trying to make it that. And that simply is not what she was living on this road.
And it ended up being her downfall, which is really sad because she was trying to do the right thing. And I wish it hadn't happened the way it did. But as we've been saying, Mrs. Hart was not the last one to not make it on the road. Let's be real here. So I think we kind of expected something to happen. Like I said even earlier, Alice did her trial. Her trial in itself was only about her curse. What else did she have to bring at that point? Unfortunately, it sounds horrible, but it's true. But I do want to talk a little bit more about Agatha's trial, because we got told something. Well, there were two things. The first, which is tiny, but I want to mention because everybody thinks that Rio might be the embodiment of death. There was a huge call out to that with the Ouija board. And on top of that, then she starts cackling. So might be a good little confirmation for anybody who's been keeping up with that. But the other thing is that we're told Agatha cannot make it off the road. Can't happen. And I want to bring something back, take a couple steps back. When I was talking about a still that had come out of, well, I guess we can call him Billy now, of Billy, when he appears to be over the doors of the Witch's Road doing his comic book accurate hex symbol, if you will, or I don't know if a hex is the right word, because we've seen what hex symbols technically look like in the MCU, but it's the circle with the star in the middle of it. And I said, along with I know other people on the internet, what if he's trapping people in, or someone in, aka maybe Agatha? Well, now we've just been told halfway through this show, Agatha cannot leave the road, because I'd assume the road has to follow suit and grant her the wish that she honestly earns after doing all of this. So that's probably her power, right? That's her inability. I mean, maybe she's walked it once before. We don't know what she asked for, but maybe this time she's smarter and is able to ask for like endless power. I don't really know the rules around this, right? Like, I don't know what we're allowed to ask for, what we aren't. But regardless, she's going to get what she wants if she makes it to the end of the road. The purpose here is she cannot leave the road. She can't actually make it back into our world, our dimension, wherever they are, wherever we are. I'm intrigued by this though, because I wonder if this theory will hold true. Because if so, I mean, a still's a still, you only see so much. Didn't look like anybody else got off the road with Teen.
No, you're right. It's definitely interesting because she's the title character, right? So it brings in this odd nuance of like, typically your title character is the one that you're going to follow. We've talked a lot about this is really teen show, it's low key Wanda's show, her comeback performance. But it is interesting that this whole time, then you are almost rooting against the main character and the title character because she is this unpredictable person who the road itself doesn't want her to succeed. And then that makes me wonder who is governing the road? The road seems sentient, but where does it get its consciousness from? Who decides that? Who decides what these trials are and how they're going to challenge the witches and who gets to come off and who doesn't? Like, that is interesting. Is there some sort of magical governing body? We talked about this before we knew about the Salem 7, which I do want to talk about too, but I think that is an interesting question that poses is who's actually telling us that Agatha shouldn't come off the road?
Well, to be fair, it was during her trial with the spirits that shared that she can't make it off the road. So I don't know if the road itself was really the one saying it more than it was what happened in that room. Because at the end of the day, technically speaking, any ghost or spirit could have come through and been in that room with them. Because it was Agatha's trial, it was probably aimed to make sure that her mother specifically, and then obviously then her son, are who come out, or at least are who are present at some point. But I don't know if the road's like in itself saying Agatha cannot get off the road more than it was just the spirits that it put forward that shared that.
That's fair. I think where I was interpreting it slightly differently was that, like, the ghosts themselves are almost like the voice of the road, and that because the road chose them, they are acting in the road's or speaking on the road's behalf. I don't know that that's true. That was just like my gut reaction to it when you were saying that.
Yeah, I guess again, it just happened to be Agatha's trial. So those were the ghosts that came forward. And obviously, Agatha being Agatha, like they don't want her to finish the road. So I just don't know if it's like the road directly more than it was just like, what if it had been Lilia's and they happened to do an Ouija board and like it was the same vibe, but they had something different to say. Like those spirits were her spirits because it was her trial.
I guess, but just as a pushback, like the road chose this as Agatha's trial with the Ouija board, so it was directly aimed at her.
But it's because they are all facing something that they are either shameful of, no, mainly shameful of, and feel guilty of. Think about what Jennifer's was and everything she won. We haven't actually explored this yet about her being bound, but she faced that in her hallucination. And then when she was tested as potions, it came down to admitting that she's been pulling tricks essentially on people, lying and hurting people through her products that were not what she's been telling people they were. She had to face that. Then you had Alice facing her curse that she's been running for from years, trying to say, that's not real. That's not real. She had to face her mother. Well, not directly, but face the spirit of her mother, essentially, and all the things her mother actually was doing for her, even though she held this grudge all this time. And Agatha now also had to face her mother and her son.
I hear you. I guess my thing is just the road is choosing the vessel, right? And so there are maybe other ways that it could have pushed on Agatha's, say, murderous tendencies.
I think you're thinking too much into it.
It's very possible. I'm just letting you know that was how I interpreted it. And I do think the road has some level of sentience. We saw that even on the broom. So I just don't know like where that begins or ends. And I think where my curiosity is really stemming from is we don't know enough about the magical realm outside of the folks at Comertage to understand what are the rules. Clearly, there are hierarchies of witches of who's acceptable and who's not based on your type of magic. So I just feel like there's so much we don't know that it's important to ask all of the questions because one day that could be important.
I'm not saying I disagree, but I do think as of right now, the road itself is just following the rules it probably has. Whoever created the road, whatever magic is keeping it going, or whatever it is, I think it just follows its own rules. And let's be real, like, we know Agatha's already walked it. So I think it probably just does the same thing every time, but it knows who's on the road and it knows what type of trial to put forward to test them. I don't necessarily think it's out to get anybody directly.
Fair enough. I want to talk about something really quick before we get into other things. And it has something to do with a little bit of some of the deep dives of research that we did a couple of episodes ago, which is the Salem 7. And we talked about how in the comics that they are actually Nicholas Scratch's children. I think that after this episode, we can safely say the MCU didn't exactly take that at face value. They definitely made a little bit of an interpretive choice there because they are actually the Salem 7 are the children. And this actually, when they said this, I was super annoyed because I was like, this is actually kind of close to what Caitlin theorized. And you were so right. And I was like, oh, this is like going to be the worst episode ever for me.
No, for real though, when they said it, I kind of was like, wow, I wasn't that far off when I first said that.
I was so mad. I was like, really, Marvel? Come on. But anyway, they are the children of the original witches in Salem that Agatha drained, who were trying to kill her with her mother. And I think the other thing to point out, as we talked about, Nicholas Scratch is pretty much confirmed dead. So he's not going to come back with his own children who are, out to get grandma. And so the MCU is playing a little bit fast and loose with the comics in the sense that the Salem 7 is the children of someone who Agatha knew, right? Her mother's coven, but they are not the children of her son. So same vibe, different exact execution, but wanted to point that out because that was something that was a big part of our discussion a couple of episodes ago. Now we have a much clearer understanding of who exactly the Salem 7 are in the MCU and how they might be slightly different from their comic counterpart.
And I was very loosely correct. Thank you very much.
Yes, Caitlin.
I also just want to add to that before we move on to the final topic of this episode, which is actually one we introduced and then got sidetracked from. Salem 7, creepy. Love the comment about the entire Halloween store out there. Was enjoying it, but also will not want to watch this at night sometimes. I enjoyed that I watched this during the day because I don't think I would have liked that at night. But moving to what we actually not started, but it was like the second main topic of the episode, but we never answered it, was what the heck do we do from here? And we got sidetracked because I brought up Rio and then we went from there. But the reason I had brought up Rio was because, as we know, she never walked out of the house for trial 3 yet. She was behind everybody. If that's true, Rio will be the one to confront Teen.
Yeah.
She's the only one that we know of that is still actively standing on the road. Obviously, we know Agatha, Jennifer, and Lilia are not gone. Unless we're just going to have a Rio and Billy Maximoff like strut down the road for 4 episodes, which I doubt. They're coming back. We still have to do Lilia's trial. Technically speaking, we have to do Rio's. She's a green witch. She's part of this coven. She has a trial still. So Rio has to be the one to confront Teen. But then what? How do we get the rest of the ladies back?
I don't know. I mean, and then let's play out this thought experiment, right? You do get them back. Method unclear. What is this coven gonna look like? Jennifer hates Agatha. Like, really, really hates her. She wanted to kill her in this trial. Now, Teen just went off the deep end and killed Agatha, but then also killed Jennifer.
Hold on, I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt you. Teen is a blood witch. He is going to replace Alice in the coven.
Yes, but Alice is already done.
I know, but they always kept saying you needed a completed coven.
Oh, yeah, true.
Remember, they keep saying that you have to keep moving as a completed coven. And this just confirmed because I had gone on, I think in the second episode when we were being introduced to their different things. And I was like, well, his title could make him a green witch, theoretically. But if he's who we think he is technically a blood witch.
Yeah.
And with Alice gone,
I mean, they're fully able to continue down the road. I just don't even know how you come back from one of your members killing another member. And then in retaliation, a different now member who is stepping into that deceased member's role kills everyone else besides one person who just happened to not be
or
out
at
of
least
the...
attempted to, because obviously we know they have to be resurrected.
Right. What do you do there? Like, how is that going to move forward? I am so curious about what that dynamic is going to be, because any bonding that we saw in episode 4 was already starting to break down just under the sheer weight of Agatha's trial and the nature of it, and how it was so clearly drilling down to her very nature and what she has done in her life and putting that out on display. So there were already fractures, and now this.
I think I'm going to ask a question that's going to make it worse.
Oh, great.
I know. But when we were talking about at the very beginning what witches you need to walk the road, Agatha doesn't fit into any of them, technically, right? Like, we know her as a siphon witch. I can't think the road requires a siphon witch because, again, to what we said earlier, it seems like that's a rare type of witch, and I can't think that they're needed on the road. But then she got a trial. So she can't just, she has to fall into some sort of category here.
Yeah, I wonder if because she already knew she was there, like obviously she wasn't counting off, like you need a this type of witch because it's me. I think that it could be a little bit more generic. Like, I'm wondering if that other type of witch is like the leader of the coven, right? Like, you have your specialist and then you have your team lead. Because if you think about it, Agatha has been kind of guiding them along. And I don't think it's necessarily just because she has been on the road before, though obviously that is a part of it. She's also the one who brought them all together. But then if you think all the way back to the one other coven that we truly have an example of, and it's very short and they don't live very long, but if you think about Agatha's mother's coven, she was clearly the leader. She was telling the other witches what to do. So I think if you're looking at the makeup of a coven, you have your specialists, like we talked about, but then you have the one that they look to, their leader, and that's the role that Agatha stepped in. And I don't know that that necessarily has to be a specific style or type of witch. It just has to be their role within the group dynamic.
Okay, that's fair. I only bring that up because, again, we haven't done Lilia's and we technically need to do Rio's. I know she was a late addition. We also all have our theories about who she might be instead of just being a green witch, but she clearly checks that box, so we do need to still explore theirs. That being said, not only do Agatha, Jennifer, and Lilia need to come back, you made a great point saying, what the heck does this coven look like? Nobody likes each other right now. That is not going to work out in the long run. I promise you it's not. So I think I'm trying to understand, are we actually going to see 2 more trials? We have the episodes to. That's 6 and 7 right there. There are your last 2 trials. Or are their trials going to shift now that the coven is starting to shift? Also, you now have another witch on the road, technically, who's showing power.
Yeah.
Does he, if we are saying he takes a spot in a coven, does he have a trial at some point? Does everybody have to have a trial?
Well, I want to point out a couple of things and then I'll answer your last question. I think the most important thing that I want to point out is this release schedule is a little weird because you put 1 and 2 together, then you had the middle set, which we're obviously working through right now, and then partially because I think of timing with Halloween, they're dropping 8 and 9 together on the 30th, right before Halloween, because obviously witches, you tie it all together. As much as poor Lilia hates all of the stereotyping.
No, for real.
She's so cute. But the reason I point this out is you so clearly laid out, well, we've got 4 episodes left, and 2 of them, if we're following this pattern, should be trials. I actually think we will still get them because I think it makes sense for 6 and 7 to continue down the road. And then whatever's going to happen in 8 and 9, which tend to be kind of crazy, they're going to drop that together as one big welcome to the pile of trash that's on fire. that also answers your question of, is Teen going to get a trial? I think if we're following my theory, the answer is no. And the reason I think they can get away with that is because who is he replacing? Someone who's already had their trial. If he was replacing someone like Lilia, he would then step in to lead her trial, but Alice already completed hers.
Yeah, I figured that was kind of going to be the answer to that question, is he won't get one. And I don't disagree with you that I think we'll finish them. But I think now these are the questions we have to ask. Also, what does that look like? Because what does our coven look like? So what are these last two trials? Because Lilia, Girlie's trial is not going to be great. I could just feel it.
I know.
And then you have Rio's. And again, there's already the theory that she's the personification of death. So there's that aspect to it. But what are we going to dig up about Rio in that trial as well? And so I think it's going to be interesting to see where we pick up in episode 6, because technically 3 witches should be dead. Although Rio is the personification of death.
I mean, if anybody can bring them back, then it's gonna be Rio, to your point.
Yeah. I walked right into that one.
You really did. I didn't put it together. So you set yourself up and then you pitched it out.
Yeah.
That's like a bad sports metaphor, and I like sports, but whatever, it's fine. I just mixed a bunch of them. But yes, you're right. You kind of set yourself up and now here we are. I think that could be a way out. I also think, to answer your question, what are we going to see in Rio's trial? If we're talking about their greatest shame, she's already told us it's the walking scar she's got in the form of Agatha Harkness. And I think that's the final answer that we're going to get in relation to Agatha's background and her son, because her trial did not focus on her son the way that we thought it would. Did he make an appearance? Yes, it did. But it actually focused on her mother and the trauma that she had from her relationship with her parent versus her trauma being a parent and losing her child. And I think Rio's is going to be the mirror, I guess, where you're holding that up to Agatha and what happened to her son, because as we theorized, Rio was involved. She's part of the reason it happened. She's at fault, and that's going to be her greatest shame, because we can see she is still very much in love with that woman, and she lost her because of whatever happened to Nicholas Scratch.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited for that one.
Me
I'm
too.
excited for both of the remaining ones, to be honest, because again, Lilia's got some skeletons in her closet, and I'm really ready for that. But I think we both agree, 8 and 9, we're thinking the Scarlet Witch makes it back. The Coven has an all-out war at some point.
Yeah.
And theoretically, Teen might be the only one who leaves the road.
I mean, those are the beats that I'm tracking.
Cool. Well, there you go, guys. We're already predicting the end of the season.
Yeah, and we're probably going to be so wrong, but we'll see.
I feel good about some of them.
Although you've been kind of right.
Yeah, and I have been pretty right so far. It's these types of shows I'm really good at thinking outside the box. So I feel really good about when I make predictions, because I'm like, it's never the way it's making you think, and it's not the way you think it's trying not to make you think. It's even further.
Yeah.
And I live in that further realm.
So far, so good. We'll see.
We'll see. It's all on recording.
Yeah. I mean, that's the nice thing, is like when we are right and we do nail it, it's like, actually, this is out here timestamped in real time. So we actually did do a really good job.
Yeah, for real.
But on that note, we are going to end this episode on Agatha episode 5, waiting with bated breath for episode 6. It's going to be a really, really long few days trying to get there, but we'll be back with you next week to break down the chaos and ramifications of this last episode. If you have just found us and you have not yet followed on your podcast platform of choice, please do that so that you are aware when we have new episodes and you can follow along. We also have our website linked below if you would like to take a look at that. And if you're a fan and you want to take an opportunity to support the show, you can do that via our Buy Me a Coffee, which is also linked below.
You guys can also follow us on all of our socials, which are linked in the show notes below. And go ahead over to our YouTube to find our Sisters Scoop segments, which is our Marvel News weekly segments where we break down 3 big topics or news stories that are coming out that week. So go ahead and meander on over there as well. We will be back next week, episode 6 of Agatha All Along. Taylor said it's going to be a hard week to get through this one, but we will be back. Do not worry. We hope you guys are loving this show. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.